G'day. In this video, we'll preview the Scourge of Ghyran rules for the Hedonites of Slaanesh. Now, the Scourge of Ghyran is offering each faction a set of seasonal rules that we match play legal for the upcoming season, General's Handbook 25-26. Now, manifesting from the Circles of Gluttony is 2 new battle formations, 3 new heroic traits, and 2 alternative war scrolls, one for Celeste and the other being for the Slaangor. Now, these units have a separate pitch battle profile, and they can be substituted for the original war scroll. You can't include both versions of one war scroll in the same army list. You can use this alternative war scroll in an army of renown, just not in a regiment of renown. So let's get straight into it and get depraved. Hedonites of Slaanesh did gain 2 new battle formations that are added to your existing 4, like your Seeker Cavalcade and your Depraved Carnival. Pretenders, once per battle in the deployment phase, it lets you pick a friendly Hedonites of Slaanesh hero that has an artifact of power to be the target. You then get to allocate a heroic trait from the figureheads of the Dark Prince or the Hedonistic Obsessions table to that hero. Now, that trait is being provided to that hero during the deployment phase, not in the army building phase. This setup is going to help you with some flexibility to go on and pick the best options for your battle plan and your opponent. Plus, in a tournament, it will allow you to change it up every game because you make that choice during the deployment, not during list building. This is a bonus heroic trait that's going onto your artifact bearer, so you can't obviously use this trait if your artifact bearer already has a heroic trait while making your army list, so just keep that in mind and split them out. A popular combination I've seen in Slaanesh is the Keeper of Secrets with the Stronger Alone trait and the Pennant of a Slaanesh artifact. Now, if you were to bring that combination into this battle formation, you would go on and give a different heroic trait to another hero in your list. You might give it out to, say, the Shard Speaker. And then when you apply this battle formation ability, you would then go on and still give your Keeper of Secrets that Stronger Alone trait. Or if you see something that's more beneficial because of your opponent or the battle plan, as I just mentioned, you could pick something else. The other battle formation is the Invaders. That's a passive ability that adds 1 to the Ren characteristic of melee weapons used by friendly Sabarite infantry units while they're wholly outside friendly territory. Eligible units include the Lord of Hubris and the Lord of Pain, Celeste, the Shard Speaker, Sigvold, your Blissbarb Archers, your Myrmidich, your Slaangor, just to name some of the options available. It is going to require you to be wholly outside friendly territory, which can make this either really easy to achieve or really hard to achieve because some of your units might struggle a little bit, not nearly as fast. I'm thinking of you, Myrmidich. But on some of the battle plans, you will have that dead no man's land kind of space where it's available to everybody. So that would count as being outside of friendly territory. But then other battle plans would have half the board being your deployment, half the board being my deployment. So there's none of that neutral territory, and you've got to get those units outside of that big space ASAP. The entire unit, meaning every part of every base in every model in that unit, must be wholly outside friendly territory. So it means that if you get stuck into combat in the middle of the battlefield, or if you're trapped in your own deployment zone, you may actually never get access to this benefit. Now, we're going to talk about this very soon, but Slaangor now have a very easy way to access this battle trait, and a list that's going to be building around them would definitely stand out and make it super easy to get access to this trait. Again, more about that pretty soon. But otherwise, it does have quite a strong offensive build for those units that can tap into speed, leverage euphoric killers, to get access to that additional rend. While your Blissbarb Archers may not get much value from this particular formation, The heroes absolutely can. Your Sigvald, your Celeste in particular, are definitely going to be better for taking this formation, and it would solve a lot of Sigvald's issues with cracking those high armor save targets. Slaanesh also gained 3 new heroic traits to go along with your existing 3 like Glory Hog. Celebrity Warlord can be picked once per battle during your movement phase for 1 command point. You pick a friendly, non-hero Sabarite unit that has been destroyed to be the target. Set up a replacement unit with half the number of models from the target unit rounding up, wholly within 12 inches of this target and more than 9 inches from all enemy units. Eligible target units will include your Blissbarb Archers, your Myrmidish, your Slaangor, your Simberish, your Blissbarb Seekers, your Hellstriders, and your Slickblade Seekers. It will only work in your movement phase, and it will cost you a command point. So it's worth saving your command points if you go second in a battle round to be able to access this ability. Since this ability is done in your movement phase, you can use it either before or after the hero with the trait has made the move, which is going to make it very difficult for your opponent to fully block out the space to bring back the unit. This will allow for potential objective stealing by running or retreating a hero and then setting up that unit on a potential unguarded point. Alternatively, you could use it before the hero moves to then reinforce a home objective. Then the hero is free to move around the board and go off and do combat things. Every unit has a worthwhile application. Those Blitzbarbs could come back and start shooting at close range and potentially bypass some of those guarded hero rules. Your Slaangor could use their ability to move if the opponent uses a command near them, making subsequent charges a lot easier. Slickblade Seekers could use their reroll charge rolls to increase those odds of making that tough 9-inch charge. This encourages at least 1 reinforced unit in the army to maximize the value of that CP, and it's going to really help those mortals in a form of recursion that normally you would only get access to from a demon style, so it's going to help the mortals a little bit. Master of Temptation can be used during an enemy hero phase, but only if the opponent has any temptation dice. You pick a visible enemy unit within 18 inches of this unit to be the target. For the rest of the turn, while your opponent hasn't used any of their temptation dice to replace a roll for the target can only use core abilities. Now, since this is used in the enemy hero phase, it will get resolved after your opponent uses all of its hero phase abilities. This means that you can't use it to prevent spellcasting or chanting because of the timing sequence, but you can use it to block any unbind attempts in your magical intervention if you declare it first. Turning off all non-core and non-passive abilities means the target will have no access to commands, reactions, rampages, active warscroll abilities. While these won't silence a wizard or a priest, it can restrict a target unit to only standard moves, shooting, charging, fighting. There are some real units that I think about that this combination, they rely on it. They rely on those non-core abilities to really make the most of it, especially in critical moments, especially during battle tactic, scoring opportunities. They're going to hate this ability. But this can be easily worked around if the target unit isn't locked into combat or can make any attacks at range or melee. The tools available to use a temptation dice heavily affects which non-core abilities this unit will be able to use and prevent. If a unit has mostly combat phase abilities that you're trying to shut down, but the unit has ranged attacks like shooting combat, it has the ability to run and charge, it can easily remove the temptation dice, and thus the ability can be kind of de-triggered through a run roll or shooting with a to wound roll or a charge roll. Again, pick your targets and be mindful of what they've got access to. At best, it's going to force a hero in a bad situation, like they're already tagged into combat, into not being able to use their bespoke warscroll abilities. The upside here is that if your opponent uses the temptation dice on a hero and not somewhere else more important, this is still really a win-win when you think about it. Also, if you go first in the round, your opponent could burn through all their temptation dice by giving them access to save rolls or using a air quote countercharge ability before you've ever had a chance to actually use this hero trait. So keep that in mind. Finally, you have Need for Perfection, which is a passive ability. The first time each turn that an unmodified charge roll, casting roll, unbinding roll, or banishment roll for a friendly non-euphoric unit wholly within 12 inches of this unit is 5 or less, that unit gets euphoric keyword for the rest of the turn. This can apply to the hero itself, and it doesn't specify that the required roll has to be a failed roll, just that it has to be 5 or less on the dice before any modifiers. You could use this trait, giving a wizard the ability to run and charge later in the turn through euphoric killers, then cast the Sadistic Spite spell, giving them those crit mortals instead of crit 2 hits. The main use here is that if you've maxed out on euphoric units, but you had another viable target that's missed out, it's obviously going to give you access to another euphoric killers. You've also gained 2 war scrolls for the Scourge of Ghyran that can be used as alternative choices to their original war scroll. The first one we'll look at is Celeste, and looking at the differences between the Scourge of Ghyran version, I'll call out everything that I notice. The 6-up ward has been upgraded to a 5-up ward, but the rest of the profile has remained the same. But when you look at the abilities, that's where the real changes have happened. The ability to reflect mortal damage and turn off command spells, they've both been lost, along with the ability to double up on the all-out attack or all-out defense bonus to non-hero demons and Saborites. Instead, what you've gained is 2 new abilities and a new war scroll spell. Champions of the Guild of Throne is a passive ability that lets you chain fight with 2 units with 1 activation phase by picking a friendly non-hero Hedonites of Slaanesh demon unit wholly within 12 inches of this unit and a friendly non-hero Saborite unit wholly within 18 inches of this unit. You resolve the second fight immediately after the first. Controlling the order of a fight activation is rare, and it can be a very powerful ability, especially for those glass cannon armies that often have to make a really tough choice where to strike first, and planning around the possibility that you will lose models in a unit before that second unit goes in and activates. With the new Celeste rule, you can play around with having 2 hammers, either of them being together or potentially far apart, as long as they're wholly within 18 inches of Celeste, knowing that you'll get to hit with both units before your opponent can retaliate, potentially dealing some lethal damage to 2 different enemy units, triggering things like your euphoric units like your 20 Demonettes, for example, and maybe you've also got 10 Slickblade Seekers. They've got access to Sadistic Spite for those crit mortals. This also punishes tougher, more elite units that rely on surviving 1 activation, being able to then strike for a second time. Wandering Minds is Celeste's War Scroll spell that casts on a 6 and lets you pick up to 1 visible friendly non-hero Saborite infantry unit, as well as up to 1 visible friendly non-hero Hedonites of Slaanesh demon infantry unit to be the target. That was a mouthful. If you picked a Saborite unit, subtract 1 from ward rolls for damage points inflicted by its combat attacks until the start of your next turn. And if you picked a demon target, it has a 5-up ward until the start of your next turn. So this new spell is going to favor the symbiosis of mortals and demon units but with different requirements than the champions of the Guild of Throne that we just spoke about. You can pick up to one of each, meaning that if you have just one mortal or one demon unit, you can still access it. You don't have to have both of them to trigger the Celeste spell. There is no requirements other than the visibility, which gives you a lot of flexibility on how you apply this on the battlefield. And unlike those previous ability, this one specifies non-hero infantry rather than non-hero units. So it will limit your uses to things like Demonettes and Myrmidish. Both the Sabarite and the Demon abilities will have a lasting effect until the start of your next turn. The Demon side is going to help with the fragility of, say, Demonettes surviving a little bit longer and potentially leveraging some boosts from things like, for example, your rally rolls, tapping into those Epicurean Revelers battle formation. While if we look at the Sabarites, it's going to depend on if your opponent has a ward in their army, but it's going to be great when you're going into armies like Death, for example, who have that baseline 6-up ward across the whole army. And that's going to allow them to provide a little bit extra punch, especially to take down larger heroes like Archaon, for example, or as I mentioned, armies like Nurgle or Death, who often rely on ward saves. Violent Offerings is an end-of-turn ability where if any damage points were allocated to an enemy wizard or priest by this unit's combat attacks this turn, and that enemy unit has been destroyed, add 1 to this unit's power level for the rest of the battle. Now, this unit can be affected by this ability multiple times throughout the game, and it is cumulative. Celeste combat attacks must allocate at least 1 point of damage to that wizard or priest that's being destroyed by the end of that turn. So Celeste doesn't have to destroy the unit to benefit from the ability, and you could achieve it through methods like, for example, the damage allocated through power through, and then you resolve this ability, stripping it of its last wounds, and then ultimately getting that power level boost. You wouldn't be able to split your attacks against multiple wizards and gain multiple levels to your power levels in a single round of combat. You can obviously do it to multiple wizards through multiple rounds and keep benefiting from there. But if you found yourself in combat with 2 wizards at once, you couldn't split the attacks, go and kill them, and get a +2 in that single round. When you gain that extra power level, it will allow you to freely cast more spells that you want. For example, your warscroll spell, Sadistic Spite, Overwhelming Acquiescence, your manifestations. As an infantry hero as well, you'll be able to access the +1 Rend bonus from the Invaders battle formation we spoke about, which is obviously going to improve the odds of destroying that wizard or priest to reap the benefits of the extra power levels. The other war scroll is the alternative Slaangor Fiendbloods. Again, it's optional. You take it if you want to take it, or run the old one if you prefer that. I think a lot of lists are going to take this, but hey, you will gain an extra point of damage on the charge, but otherwise on the Scourge of Ghyran version, nothing has changed at a base profile level. Where the changes are coming about is through the abilities that I absolutely loved. Veiled Threat is a deployment phase ability that lets you set up this unit into ambush during deployment. Then, during any movement phase, you can activate the Bestial Onslaught, which lets you set up this unit on the battlefield wholly within 9 inches of a battlefield edge and more than 9 inches from all enemy units. So this deep striking ability gives the unit a very unique role, as it's the only unit in the army that can do this. Even a single unit of 3 Slaangor is worth putting into your army to go on and steal an objective, put pressure on your opponent's backline, go and snipe out and attack a particular hero that's sitting in the backfield, whatever it might be. And better yet, like Storm Fiends in Skaven, this unit can appear in either player's movement phase, which means that you could place them after your opponent has resolved all of their moves and set up in that phase. It lets you do things like set them up on obscuring terrain and have them more than 12 inches away to ensure that they can't be shot or charged at, and they're going to be sitting there safe. Or maybe you place them onto an objective that your opponent has moved off of. You could drop them next to or near one of your units that you think are about to get charged, or maybe they got picked for a battle tactic that they're going to go on and go attack them. You know that's coming down the line, or bring some reinforcements in via the Slaangors. Or you might even think about using those Slaangors to then set up for a countercharge to then go support a unit later on. Since your opponent can't use reactive commands like redeploy in their own turn, you will have a lot of control on where you put them on the battlefield and hopefully avoid a lot of incoming damage that could harm your Slaangor. You could deploy them outside of maximum charge threat range of a hammer. You'd go in and support a hero and go on and maybe wait out to then go out and kill a target hero or maybe a ranged threat. The other ability is the instinctive advance, where once per phase, it is a reaction for when an opponent declares a command for a unit within 12 inches of this unit. Now, immediately after the command or the ability it was reacting to has been resolved, this unit can move 3 inches. It can move through combat ranges of enemy units, and it can make its move into combat. Opponents will need to respect your Slaangor, because every phase that they use a command within 12 inches of the Slaangor, they will get a free 3-inch move. If they're in range of a shooting unit and they have all-out attack, your Slaangor gets to move 3 inches. That's going to help you set up for a countercharge. If a unit redeploys away from them, unless they roll a 4, they would essentially be wasting a command, because they might move 3 or 2, but guess what? You get to move 3. If a unit's using cover of fire against the Slaangor and you're sitting just outside of 3 inches, your Slaangor could then move straight into combat, eliminating the need to make a charge roll, but you would be sacrificing their charge bonus. It lets you freely move into combat, which is a great way to reduce the damage of your opponent should they have any bonuses that are triggered on a charge. Maybe they even got like charge mortals. A lot of cool things you can do here. But what it won't let you do is it won't let you move out of combat zone. So you're in combat, your opponent triggers an all-out attack and issues the command. Yes, you can then move 3 inches away from your opponent. And, technically you might have moved out of a lot of the threat ranges of your opponent, or so you think. But the way that the game rules kind of work means that your opponent, even though they targeted the Slaangor, then they move towards 3, they are still the eligible target, and they still get to resolve as many of attacks they had when they initially did the pile-in and the triggering the all-out attack. A little confusing, I know, but in 99% of situations, this is an incredible ability, and all 3 of these rules create so many opportunities now that the Slaangor, I think, can take real advantage of. So I think there is some really good stuff here for the Hedonites of Slaanesh. The 2 new battle formations should promote some alternative list building. I think the Pretenders is my favorite of the new options to get that extra heroic trait. While I really like the 3 new heroic traits that are available to us, I think that there are some solid lists that can be built from them, especially when I look at, say, for example, Needs of Perfection and the Master of Temptation traits. Both of them really stand out for me out of the new 3. The Deep Striking Slaangors wasn't on my bingo card this year. If I was going to think about the Slaangors getting an alternative war scroll, never would have thought of this. I love it. I love these Deep Striking Slaangor, and the extra 3-inch movement when you use a command near them. Absolutely brilliant. This is going to get picked in a lot of lists. I can see it being a very popular choice. The alternative Celeste is a solid pick. As you know better than I do, you are spoiled for choices when it comes to hero options. This will help you if you are planning on building more of a mixed list with your demons and your Saborites. Obviously, if you're all in on demons or all in on Saborites, it may not be as valuable, but you've gained another solid choice to pick onto your roster. But as I start thinking about this and what the list might kind of form and how you might take advantage of it, I want you to come over and chat with me on the AOS Coach Discord server, where we are theory crafting and list building and talking about Hedonites of Slaanesh and all of the factions and what the Scourge of Ghyran is going to mean for us. There is a link in the episode description. Come join us, come check it out. And I can't wait to see how you start playing around with your new rules, especially you, Slaangor. It's what a time to be alive. Thanks for hanging around until the end. I hope you enjoyed that video and you walked away with a few new ideas. Now, if you did, I would love it if you pressed like on the video, as well as left me a comment with your thoughts. The conversation will continue over on Discord, and the link is down below in the episode description. I also want to give a massive shout out to the AOS Coach patrons and YouTube members who are supporting the channel and the growth that you're seeing here. So cheers, you are all bloody legends. And until next time, don't roll a double one on a spellcast.